and the cap's 20, so. Yeah, but that's just odd. Not for the gap. My whole Thursday party is
Will. If we all had as much as people thought, we'd be rich, wouldn't we?
I've never taken it anywhere else.
yeah. Because it makes a while. Yeah.
If I've been somewhere else the last few weeks, I could not log in. And I don't know.
It's just persnickety, isn't it?
Something with it.
Well, there's adaptive options, but I'm not sure what change.
Yeah, I don't either, so I left it alone.
Let's see what the diagnostics does. And then
Oh, I done it.
it makes you feel like you did something right.
It did help. It did help.
Don't worry about that. No worries.
Oh, sorry. All right, let me do
I was
my.
just looking at my email from work page. I don't have
know.
any. We had a girl emailing me about anything.
I promise I'll try to come shop.
I can check it from my phone.
Cheers.
See if there was something.
Yeah, right.
What was he doing?
Come take.
Oh, okay.
He was a night person.
Oh, okay. All right. So they're not really related to
Part
that.
of education, right? Inside of one of their facilities.
After that happened, program director for science resigned. After all that kind of went down the drain.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
I kind of get.
we are going to try to continue. I know you're still enjoying your lunch, and we're all had a great morning, and we want to go ahead and continue with our agenda because we have Miss Donna Murray with us, and I think that she has another appointment, so we really appreciate her being here and want to honor her time. So we're going to turn it over to Dr. Silver and Miss Murray.
So I'm just going to do a quick segue and then I'll let Donna introduce herself. She's with Digital Teaching and Learning, and after there was so much discussion at the last meeting about access to the information on the module. So that's one issue that we're running into, is that the information on the module is accessible by North Carolina educators only. So we went to another meeting where they were talking about opportunities for open sources. That might be something you're hearing a lot about now, open source. So it's part of DPI's efforts to make information digitally available. I don't know as much about it right now, so I'm excited to hear what Donna has to share too, but she's here to share perhaps an opportunity to share those resources on another platform so it could be more widely available. So we'll see what she has to offer, and I want to thank Donna for coming today. And she's going to sit and present so she can be using the tool on the screen as she goes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Silver. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. As you were having your final conversation right before lunch, I was like frantically back there taking notes because I think some of the concerns and thoughts around how can we get this information to teachers and how can we make sure that we have accurate instructional resources in front of our educators. I'm hoping today that through this you're going to hear some potential opportunities, potential solutions to those types of questions. So I'm really excited. I hope you'll find, like I did just a few minutes ago, that it seems like the timing is perfect, and this is a great segue into hopefully answering some of those concerns you had. So I do have a bit.ly link up here, and that's just in case you want to access these slides later. We can certainly email those to you as well. But that Go Open NC, and tell me how to pronounce your acronym. SACIE?
That's right.
That's right? Okay. Go Open NC SACIE. It's just a bit.ly link. It is case sensitive, so everything's lowercase. And that would take you to the slide deck if you'd like to reference that later. So what I'd like to do today is just tell you a little bit about the history of this project, what it's all about, what it provides and can potentially provide for our educators and ultimately for our students. And so I started this work. I've been with DPI now for 6 years as a consultant, but about 3 or 4 years ago, we started the North Carolina Digital Learning Plan, and you know that came out of the Friday Institute, going out into the field and saying, where are we in terms of digital learning in North Carolina? Where do we need to go, and what are some recommendations on how to get there? And out of that, we learned that teachers are already using what we call OER, Open Educational Resources. They're excited about transitioning to digital resources, but they struggle to find high quality, which includes accurate, right? High quality, standards aligned resources. And we talk about, I heard you saying, you know, teachers don't have time to be spending 10 hours finding resources, right? And when they do find things, we want to make sure that they're high quality and accurate. So we're going to address that today. And through that digital learning plan was born recommendations like, we need some review processes in place to help teachers identify what quality means. So we're going to talk about that today. We also need a space, a service where these resources can live so that teachers can curate and create and work together and build a community. And that's what our platform that I'm going to talk about today is all about. So our initiative around open educational resources is really focused kind of on these high-level goals right here. And that is to provide a space for teachers to have to find those high-quality standards-aligned resources. It's also, as you'll hear me talk about, partnerships. It's going to open a door, and already has opened a door, for lots of partnerships, not just from state to state with other states who are engaging in OER work, but also just among our teachers in our districts to help us get out of those silos where we're, you know, if we're staying in our lane and we're so uber focused and crazy busy that we're just not even thinking about the possibility of being able to share those high quality resources with others. And we want to open those doors. It's an opportunity for us to personalize materials, and we're going to talk about exactly why that's a key piece of OER in just a second. It's, to me, a great opportunity for professional learning around what is quality, what does open licensed content mean, and what do we really understand our standards. So to me, those are three big pieces of professional learning that go with this initiative. And this is all about growing a community. And you'll understand that a little bit more when we jump into the platform itself. But we need some common understanding around OER. So this kind of gives, the next two slides kind of give you an overview of what OER are. Open educational resources are all things instructional materials. And so I've listed a few things up here. It's everything from a textbook to the whole course to a lesson plan to a video to an image. It's professional learning instructional materials. It's all the things. I say it's every level of granularity of instructional resources. But here's the kicker. This next slide tells you, and you see I bolded 4 of the 5 words. It's not that just that these instructional materials are free to access, but they are licensed in such a way that teachers can legally reuse them, revise them, remix them, and redistribute them. So talk a little bit about revise and remix. When we talk about revising, that's making improvements to instructional materials. And we'll talk about where copyright comes into this in just a second. Remixing is the idea that I can take this open resource over here and this open resource over here and potentially make something even stronger and better by mixing them together. So we can't talk about open licensing without broaching the topic of copyright. And folks, I tell everyone, even if we weren't going down this OER initiative path, we need additional professional learning with our teachers on copyright in the digital age. Because once upon a time, if I wanted to share something, I usually just shared it with my neighbor across the hall. And now the internet gives us this amazing opportunity, but also some potential risks at breaking copyright law when we can share something with the whole world in one click. And so in this landscape, when you create something, it's automatically all rights reserved. You don't have to go to the Copyright Office. You don't have to put the C with the circle around it. When something is created in a tangible format, it's automatically all rights reserved. And you've probably heard about things that are kind of on the full opposite side of that spectrum, which are public domain. And that means no rights reserved. That means the copyright's either expired or someone created something and said, what's mine is yours. I'm not keeping any rights. OER lives in that middle land where some rights are reserved. So a content creator, instead of saying, hey, if you want to use my stuff, just contact me and we'll talk about it. Instead, the content creator says to the whole world, I'm licensing this content so that you can do these things without getting special permission from me. And that's the world of OER. So imagine the opportunities for personalized learning if I can take instructional materials and revise them, remix them, share them out in different formats without having to get special permission from the copyright owner. And that's the land that we live in. There's lots of folks who are creating instructional materials. They want to share them. They want to give up some of their rights. And now we live in this space where the some rights reserved is just growing and growing and growing. And instructional materials are available out there under this landscape of, or under this title of OER, so that teachers can take that and personalize materials for students. And so this, I would love, if you have some additional time, I encourage you to go to the Creative Commons website. But this is a slide that I want to share because it's become a common language around openly licensed content. Because if I'm going to share something with you and give up some of my rights, it'd be great if we could all kind of have a common language around it rather than having to go to the terms of use page and reading that 4-page legal document. And so out of that, this nonprofit created these open licenses. And I'll give you an example. That very first license in the top left-hand corner has the little person with the circle around it, and it says "by" underneath it. That Creative Commons license simply means that I, as a creator, am giving up all my rights. You can have my stuff that I've created. You can do whatever you want to with it. You can reuse, revise, remix, redistribute it. The only thing I'm asking you to do is to give me credit. So that's really, other than public domain, like the most open license out there. Imagine if our teachers have access to instructional materials where they don't have to worry about, ooh, can I legally make copies of this for my students? Can I change this around because this doesn't really fit the needs of my classroom or North Carolina standards? What can I, what rights do I have to make changes to this content? And these licenses and various levels on this spectrum really define those rights that have been given up by the copyright owner. So this is that common language that I'm talking about, and this is how folks can easily find and create and license their own instructional materials. Now, and I joke that, do you remember when QR codes came out and then all of a sudden you saw them everywhere? I challenge you to start looking for these icons because you'll be surprised at how often they're used out there. And that actually, there's websites like Flickr, there's sharing websites like that where folks can upload their content and select one of these licenses so that users know how they can use that content legally. So I know we're giving a lot of background before we jump into the platform, but it's important for you to understand the whole foundation around OER, and it's going to be important for our teachers as well. So a key piece to this is really that next to the last bullet around professional learning, helping teachers understand copyright, helping them understand open licensing and what that means and how they can remix content. So we wanted to create this service where teachers could come to not only search for OER, but to be able to curate the best of instructional materials, be able to create, and also to be able to grow this community of practice so that we've got teachers who know how to create and use effectively high quality instructional materials, and we need a space where we can share that and talk about those materials. So this community of practice, all of these things are really what we were looking for when we put out an RFP to get bids for some potential OER services. And so we do have a service. That's what I'm going to share with you today. We've called the service and the initiative Go Open North Carolina, Go Open NC. And we are getting ready to launch this service in December to all teachers in North Carolina. We do have currently about 1,200 users across the state who have been engaged in some professional learning and some planning and given us some feedback through a pilot. But I want you to know that there's been a whole lot of work happening behind the scenes. So I won't go everything on this slide except to say the installation and the initial implementation of this process has been a heavy lift. But that's purposeful because we don't want to just get this product and then turn it around and throw it at teachers. We want the foundation to be there with professional learning and to make sure we've got good content in there to be exemplars when teachers jump on board. So we are doing a beta launch right now through November, and then we will do that full launch on December 16th. And what that means is that teachers will be able to have single sign-on to this platform, just like when they go to their current dashboard and they can get to all of their software platform, all of their shortcut links to all of the platforms that they currently use. This will just be one more icon right there on that page, and goes through our single sign-on service so that they can access this at any time through that dashboard. So here's the website, and I'm going to jump on over. You are welcome at any time to go to this website, even though we've not fully launched. So we haven't shared this website widely across the state because we really want to have that foundational conversation with folks before they jump in. But feel free to share this with your colleagues and your peers. Go opennc.oercommons.org is the website, and it's linked on the slide if you're following along.
And it's linked in your agenda too.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
a
That's
hyperlink
right.
in
Thank you,
your
Dr. Silver. It is linked in your agenda. The national platform is called OER Commons, and the company that has started that, the nonprofit that started OER Commons, is the vendor that we're partnering with for our site. And you may say, well, if there's a national site for OER, why would we want our own? For a couple of reasons, actually. One, we want North Carolina standards aligned content. So in order to have our standards live in a space, we had to have our own site. That was obviously a non-negotiable for us. The other thing is we want a North Carolina community of practice around instructional materials aligned to our standards. So that's why we kind of call OER Commons the Library of Congress, if you will, and then this is the North Carolina Library. So what I want to do is jump over to the site and just kind of give you a very basic overview. I will say, if you don't have an NCED Cloud login, you can't log into the site to do things like join a group, author a resource, rate materials, things like that. You do have access to view everything. It's a public-facing site where you can view all of the resources, but anything that, what we say, has to write to the database requires that login. So if you don't have an NCED Cloud account, and you start digging around in here later and you can't access some things you'd like to see, I would love to talk with you through that and give you some screenshots or even video conference with you to dig a little deeper if that's helpful. So I just want to kind of give you the lay of the land here. So this is a place where right off the main page here, teachers can look for instructional materials aligned to standards. First they can just do a keyword search or select by subject grade or even a collection of standards. And then when they get to the next screen, they can actually filter down to a specific standard to find resources. So I'm just going to click the search button and without any parameters. And maybe you'll notice that currently in the site, we have over 40,000 resources. And a lot of those have been things that we've imported in from resources we already had in other systems. And then we also have teachers in there already curating and adding things and creating things. So from here, of course, I can refine my search. I can click on a resource. You'll see right off the bat that I can see the rating. There's a few different ways to manage what I call answering the question of who's minding the store. The whole community is minding the store. And so, for example, when I go to Amazon to purchase something, I guarantee you probably read a few evaluations of whatever it is you're trying to purchase and look at the ratings before you select, right? And that's the idea here, is we grow this community of practice and we talk about what quality looks like in an instructional resource. There's opportunities for teachers to not only leave comments, but to evaluate based on a quality rubric and also to leave star ratings. So there's lots of embedded pieces for that piece around minding the store, who's really looking out for quality. There's also the functionality in this system. Dr. Silver, you keep me on time because I could say, I don't want to go past my time.
Passionate about it.
I'm doing okay? Okay. I just want to talk a little bit about kind of the hierarchy of the site, because I think this is going to be important to you, to this team, as you're considering how can SACIE help teachers find what they need when they need it. And so the structure of the site kind of looks like this. I told you that, actually I can go back to a slide because I actually have a slide that kind of tells the story a little bit. So OER Commons is that what I called like the Library of Congress. So that's the National Library. Go Open NC is like the North Carolina Library. But there's also features and functionality in the site with things like hubs and groups. So a hub is kind of like a wing of the library. So it doesn't mean that you can't access that content elsewhere in the library, because I could search for it right there on the home page. But if I do need a space that kind of is its own wing, then we can certainly could do that through the creation of a hub. So I'll give you a couple examples. We're working on a social emotional hub that'll have resources, professional learning and instructional resources aligned to social emotional support for teachers and students. We're also going to have we're also working with Teachers of the Year, to have a Teachers of the Year hub to say, here's where our Teachers of the Year can put their instructional resources, and people can go directly to that wing of the library to find it quickly. So I think about the possibility of having an American Indian hub where you have a space for us to build collections of resources for teachers, for students, but also a space to have those professional learning resources like you were talking about earlier. So I was really excited as you were talking, because I was thinking, ooh, hub, that's a hub, that's a hub. But certainly if you decide at this time, oh, we're not really ready to think it, we just need to start wrapping our arms around a hub. I want you to know that other avenues exist for us to kind of build some supports for teachers that they can kind of directly go to. And one of those is a group. Anybody can create a group. Any user in the system can create a group, and it can be an open group or it can be a closed group. But if you think about a group as being like a table in the library where a study group can get together and build kind of their own little community around a topic or a content area, you could certainly have a group where maybe even we start with some educators focused on creating accurate and high quality instructional materials around American Indian history, and have that group, even start out closed if we needed to, but a space for them to collaborate and grow and develop instructional materials. And then the last kind of hierarchy to this website is what we call a collection. So we have all these individual resources, but maybe we want to have a collection of resources where a teacher can come and say, ooh, I just want to see stuff on STEM. What you got? Certainly they could search for that, and they could probably even filter down to a very specific standard, but through hubs and through things like collections, we can kind of point teachers in the right direction rather than just having them start from a blank search page. And so here are some collections that we already have. Basically, these collections are automatically either pulled by common standard or a common keyword. There's an opportunity in the system for us to endorse materials. So I heard you guys talking earlier about this idea of what if we have high quality content and we kind of put the SACIE stamp of endorsement on it. There's an opportunity in the system to do exactly that. And then we could have a collection right here on the collections page of those endorsed resources so that teachers can quickly find them. So there's lots of different kind of moving pieces to the platform, but that's kind of an overview of the hierarchy. We didn't talk about the create button, so let me just mention that for a second. This is the space where teachers can come in and create content that lives in the system. Excuse me, I'm on the national website. Let me get back to the North Carolina website. There we go. So if I go to the create button here, you'll notice that, of course, you have to be logged in order to create something. This is a space where teachers can go through this embedded wizard here and actually build out an instructional resource. Yes, ma'am.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely, please do.
Because now you're at a frame that I think I have a question about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Please.
if I want to upload a lesson on, it doesn't matter, sentences, is there some parameters, length, of material, number of pages, number of words?
That's a great question. And no, there's not at this point. It's pretty open. In fact, one of the things that we're doing is moving over content that we currently have in SchoolNet that's from our Global Educator digital badge collection, where those folks have been developing lesson plans and they live in SchoolNet. What we're doing is moving that content over using the authoring tool, because rather than just link it to an external link, we want to put those lesson plans and all their related attachments in this space, because once you put an open license on it, teachers can come in here and hit the remix button, and they can remix that lesson plan and make it even better. So maybe I create a lesson as a classroom teacher, and Dr. Arstein, you tell me if I haven't fully answered your question, but this kind of, I think, expands the idea a little bit more. As a classroom teacher, if I create a lesson plan and I say, ooh, I think it's high quality, but I know that I'm really lacking some content in here or some strategies in here for my English learners. That's a piece I struggle with, but I'm going to put my lesson plan out there and hope that somebody out there in the community can take that and maybe add that piece to it. As another teacher who is well-versed in English language learner strategies can go in there and hit the remix button, add that piece in there, publish it with a description that says, I've added in some strategies for our English learners. And what happens is it builds this history. So I can always go back to the original content, but I can see all the revisions made from that openly licensed
So the
content.
originator is still part of the history?
The originator is still part of the history. And that's one of the things about OER that we really stress is to be kind of what we call an OER steward, you really have to give conspicuous attribution. And I think that's going to be a key piece for our educators too, because if we want them to come to the table and share their stuff and put it out there, knowing that folks might be rating and commenting on it, we've got to develop this atmosphere, this culture, that it's okay to share, that it's okay to add things and make things better. And it's also okay to give attribution when it's due, to give that pat on the back and say, thank you for contributing. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to piggyback on your thing from
Question.
earlier. Say you have an educator who believes in all their heart that this is a fabulous lesson.
Right.
It is phenomenal. Here's my PowerPoint presentation. Is there anyone guidelining and looking at these things before they're published for me now to go on to and say, oh, let me see what there is about Native Americans?
That's a great question.
Oh, that looks great.
Yeah,
but
but
has
it's-
no idea
Right.
that it's
right.
not a well-written lesson or high-quality lesson.
Exactly. And how do we support our new teachers when they come in and make an assumption that maybe everything
It's great.
is great, right? Especially if it just looks tightly put together and right.
You wouldn't
And
know.
Exactly. So one of the things and that's a question that comes up every time we talk about Go Open. And I'll be honest, there is some inherent risk in here. What we have to do is mitigate that risk. And these are some of the things that I talk about when I talk about quality assurance and that who's minding the store thing. What we're able to do through things like endorsements, collections, building those hubs, having those groups, having professional learning around what does quality look like, which includes having accurate materials. All of that to me is kind of built into this quality assurance module. So there's not this one person who's minding the store. It's the whole community. What we need to do is help teachers understand, especially if we have teachers who may not know their content very well, who may be a novice teacher and need some additional supports, to point them in the directions of the collections and the endorsed content and say, start here. You'll notice one thing on there that reads cleanup of low-rated resources. We do have the ability, and it's actually in the user agreement that says if you put something in here, we can take it out without warning if we find something that's poor. But I challenge us to be really careful about that space, because the entire intent of OER is to have quality improvements, have the possibility of quality improvements happening to those resources. If we take out the low-rated content before anybody's had an opportunity to make quality improvements to it, I think we're missing a great opportunity to help our teachers understand how to improve content, but also missing this opportunity to take something that maybe is mediocre and making it quality. So some of the things we talk about are, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could do some of these things in green? And these are the things that we're working with our vendor on. Wouldn't it be great if folks could earn micro-credentials for creating quality content? Wouldn't it be great if they could earn a micro-credential for commenting and rating content? Because those things are going to matter if we want to be able to go in and have a reliance on looking at the ratings. We've got to have people in there rating, right? How can we do that? How can we feature super users who we know, like our teachers of the year and some of our high quality content creators? How can we feature those so that we point people in that direction first? And how can we even add in some social features to this community so that people can follow one another and so that it's easy to find out when some high quality content's being created? So this, to me, there's not one person minding the store, but all of these pieces combined, in my opinion, speak to that question around how do we make sure what teachers find is quality. It's going to be an ongoing process to help teachers understand what does quality look like. I showed you the website, and we didn't talk too much about navigation and how to click through everything. It's pretty self-explanatory, honestly. If I had not said anything to this, I dare say you would have been able to go in and navigate it fairly easily. We're not going to have a lot of professional learning on how to click path through the system. Instead, we can spend our time helping teachers understand what does quality mean, what do my standards mean, and what does open licensing actually mean. And those, to me, are the three big pieces around professional learning. So I'm not trying to skirt your question. That's a question we hear every time and is valid, right? We want to make sure teachers don't, even at the state level, we have leadership asking questions like, okay, if this is going to be a North Carolina product, how do we make sure everything in there is quality stuff? This isn't that type of landscape. This landscape is a place where a community comes together to curate, create, and share openly licensed content. What we want to do is build in these pieces so that the quality content bubbles to the top. And then what we've even envisioned is, wouldn't it be great if we could pull teachers together and say, go in there and find a low-rated material and make it quality. So giving opportunities for teachers to do those quality improvements. We've talked about partnering with institutes of higher ed to say, let's get your pre-service teachers in here. They're creating content. Let's get that content in here, and then allow our teachers to make quality improvements to that too.
Now, is everything in there, or what I'm gonna say? I guess what teachers upload. Is it always able to go in and change it, or no? Are you
so is everything open
go
licensed?
In and change a lesson?
Right.
Always.
So there's when you upload content, when you author content, you pick one of those 6 licenses I was showing you earlier, where you can say you can do whatever you want to this. You can remix it, but you just got to give me credit. Things like that. There are a couple of licenses that are called no derivative licenses. So, for example, we are working with the team who put together tools for NC teachers, which are K-8 math resources, and all of that content is being moved into the system using the authoring tool. There are some resources that go along with those math instructional resources that the integrity of the resource really has to stay exactly as it is. You can share it, you can redistribute it, but no remixing and revising, right? In those instances, and only in those instances, it's important to put that license on there that says no derivatives. In those instances, the remix button's not even there. So it's kind of embedded in the authoring tool. But as an author, you pick your license. And I say license, OER, some folks say they're OER purist, and they say if it's not the by symbol and nothing else, then it's not OER. And I think more along a spectrum, because even if it's no derivatives, you still have the right to reuse and redistribute. If something was fully copyrighted, all rights reserved, you would not have that permission. So even no derivatives would allow me to make copies for my students, share it online, things like that. So to me, I'm more than an OER purist. I see it as a spectrum. So there are opportunities, but I hope that answers your question. That remix button isn't there unless it's openly licensed.
It kind of reminds me of Wikipedia.
Yes, very much so. And that's a great example. And let me tell you why, Dr. Oxentine, because the Wikipedia example, if you don't know the history of Wikipedia, when it first started, it was a closed environment. And you had to have content that was vetted by, I think, 3. It may have just been 2, but I think I'm right in saying it was 3 peer reviews before something could be posted on Wikipedia. Well, in the first year, they had like 300 approved items show on Wikipedia. So they said, well, this is not working. We want this to kind of be a collection of knowledge, and this is not working. So they completely opened it up. And at first, it was a hot mess, right? And here's why. Because the community had not come to the table yet, right? When we grow a community around openly licensed content, then you've got folks who can make those iterative improvements to content. You also have an opportunity to get your talent to the table and say, let's make this better. One of the things in Wikipedia, I don't know if you know this or not, but some institutes of higher ed have said when folks are writing their dissertation, they challenge them to go into Wikipedia, find content that relates to their dissertation, and make sure it's right. And add in all of the related references that go with that content. So it's important that as we, I joke that the system is ready to go, but it's not. Because there's so much foundational work and conversation around what does it mean to be an OER steward? What is OER? And how do we grow this community? Because it's not gonna, you may remember the movie Field of Dreams when they say, if you build it, they will come. I joke that this is the opposite. If they come, we will build it. And so this is about working with educators to come together to this space to do things like vet materials, create materials, curate materials, and share materials so that we can make it better. One of the other things, and I apologize, I'm sure I'm way over time. One of the other things that we've created is this tool. This is born out of the digital learning plan, is this quality review tools for digital learning resources. And this rubric on the right-hand side, and I've linked to it. I'm sure it's difficult to read from where you are, but there's links on this slide and on the previous slide. This toolkit has been developed. It's a rubric and a checklist, and that rubric is actually going to live in Go Open NC, so that teachers can go in and actually rate materials based on this. And this piece, this checklist, this rubric is also going to be a self-evaluation when you go in to publish something. So as an author, you have your own user agreement to say, I'm sharing content that is not copyrighted. That means we have to help teachers understand exactly what copyright is about. And it's also a time for them to say, okay, you know what, I did really well creating this lesson, but I'm really missing a piece, I'm really not sure that it's motivating. And so there's key components to that's built, that is included in the rubric and even within the checklist, some kind of key phrases, key statements, key questions, guiding questions to help teachers understand what quality should look like. So one of the things we're doing is building out this toolkit so that teachers and administrators can work together and help identify, when I say something's accessible, what does that mean, right? When I say something is accurate, what does that mean? And building in resources to go along with that. So we're really excited that this tool is going to be embedded into our site. I did skip a slide because this is what I was doing when you guys were chatting earlier. I was thinking, ooh, through the lens of SACIE. Mm-hmm. So you were talking about things like the module, the Canvas course, and maybe even developing PowerPoints or videos or something that kind of like has that stamp of endorsement. There's an opportunity through the hub, through groups, through collection, to have those professional learning resources live within the platform. And then the other thing I heard you folks talk about is this idea of having access to instructional materials, and then I put in parentheses and continuous improvement of, because that's what the OER initiative is all about. And this idea that as you develop materials, I think you said that there's some that live on the SACIE website, right? So having some of those materials as appropriate live in this space, having a collection of those stamped the endorsement stamped materials live in this space. There's already OER out there for American Indian history. I was looking for some last night. Oh, there's a collection, there's a collection. So pulling in and curating those resources and bringing those already created content pieces in. So there's lots of opportunities. What I challenge this group to think of next is, excuse me, let me go back to my hierarchy. There we go. Is what would make sense moving forward? Do we need to build a collection? Would that be helpful? A collection of resources? Would it make sense to go ahead and build a wing of the library that's very specific to the goals of this group? Or is it that we need to build out some smaller groups and kind of start the conversation and community that way? It doesn't have to be any of those. We can do individual resources that just live in the system and are attached to standards that are appropriate. But I challenge you to think about where can we start, and how can we grow, and what do teachers need in order to be able to help their students? So that's the. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
As when we're thinking about the wing, I'm thinking, and well, the hub, the group,
Yes.
and the collection, all of that. Some of us here are employees with the state, so we're able to access
get in.
NCED Cloud. Some of us are not.
Right.
So my question to you is, do you have to be a member or of NCED Cloud in order to create this?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So currently, if you do not have an NCED Cloud account, you cannot log into the system. One of the things that we're talking with, and I had talked with Dr. Petrie Martin before she left, and said, if we really want to connect with institutes of higher ed, we really want to connect with external partners. But if we want to give them some ownership into this landscape and to help us build this and be part of the community, we're going to have to give them access. So know that that's a continued conversation. In our division, we have new leadership, and then of course Dr. Emery is fairly new as well. So we haven't dug deep into that conversation yet, but know that it's on our radar, because one of the things we have planned coming up very soon in the next few months is going ahead and starting to build those partnership relationships, like with our non-formal educators. I met with them a few years ago at like our museums and our libraries, and said, do you have digital content? Are you thinking about creating digital content? And they said, yes, we can't get teachers to come to our website unless it's word of mouth. And we said, let's put it in the system. And at that point, we didn't have a system, but now we do. So partnering with these external partners means we have to talk about how do we give them access. So please know that that's on our radar. In the meantime, we can work together if the group decides we want to go ahead and have a hub, and we need some external folks who aren't in our school system with an NCED Cloud account to be able to jump in and help with that. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out.
But right now,
Okay.
everyone can access the
site.
the design and the
content.
the content that's in there. We just can't upload those.
That's
that are-
right.
Well, I'm
That's
a
right.
member of NCED Cloud, but I'm saying those that are not just can't upload.
That's right. You can't upload. You can't do anything that kind of ties back to you. So you can't leave ratings or comments and things like that. But in terms of accessing, being able to download content or link out to content, you can still see and access everything. You just can't do
That's
anything
great
that
to know,
ties back.
because when we developed the module, that has been the concern from some of our tribal leaders, that they don't have access to that.
Right,
And
right.
so they would like to have access to that.
Access.
So this
That
would be
makes
a way,
sense.
at least if we put something in here, they would have access to it and they could look at it. I mean, they
Yes.
couldn't upload at this point, but I mean,
That's
they
right.
still could have
They could
access
see,
to
yes,
it.
and at least see the features and functionality. And I think specifically for this group here, I know many of you don't have access. If you do want to dig deeper into like the wings and the hubs, I encourage you to actually go to OERcommons.org, because you can create a free account on the national platform and be able to do a lot of the same functionality pieces that our current North Carolina site has. So I encourage you, we don't have a lot of hubs currently in the North Carolina site, but you'll notice on the OER Commons site, there's all different kinds of hubs that you can look at and explore, as well as joining groups and things like that. So I encourage, and you can create from here as well. So you can see it's even kind of laid out very similarly. So I encourage you to take a look at that if you want to dig deeper in the meantime. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
No, I'll stay all day.
Sorry, because I'm like an educator, so I'm coming from an educational standpoint.
Absolutely,
of it.
yes, please.
So it's going to be in our cloud.
And your cloud, yes.
It's going to be an app
That's right,
starting December whenever, 16th.
December 16th.
How are you planning on letting educators know about it and know exactly the functionality
All the
of it?
things. That's a great question.
Unless
Thank
you're
you.
coming to our schools and saying, here is a PD on it.
Right, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because I would
absolutely.
say, oh, they just added something else. I'm not going there because
Never
I don't
mind.
have time to go there.
Exactly. No, I completely understand
I
that.
mean-
So one of the things, and I'm scrolling through my slide deck, forgive me, I was trying to find my, this piece right here. So one of the things that we've done is, obviously, we had a pilot, kind of late winter last year. And then we went, us and the vendor, went around and did regional events in every region in April and then again in May. We said we made 2 tours of the state, and we met with district leaders in in almost every LEA, as well as instructional support staff, to help them start thinking about, how do we roll this out in our district? What does this look like for us? For someone like WAKE or CMS, who already has an instructional system with materials in it, what does this look like for them versus someone who says, we don't really have a space, or we just have a Google Drive where we put some things? What does this look like for us? So really digging in deep with their team to say, how do we move forward with implementation? So we have communication directly with those folks at this time. And then the other thing that we're doing is building out kind of a launch pad. So there's a Go Open NC Google site that will be shared along with lots of communication. And that Google site is jam-packed with everything from tutorials on how to navigate the site, but also things like that toolkit on what does quality look like. So everything from videos to professional learning resources to in print format, every level of granularity that we can come up with is going to live on that site as kind of a launch pad before people jump in to Go Open. So our communication plan is going to be well before December 16th to all teachers. Does that make sense? So that we can kind of set the stage and help folks understand where we're going and what to do when you show up to the site. The key piece to this is helping teachers understand that Go Open NC is not going to be something that is perfect when you first jump in. And we've got to help teachers understand that, because we know if we don't sell them the first time they click on it, they don't have time to come back. We've missed our one chance. So it's key that this implementation process is slick. And that means communication, professional learning, and that's why, even though the service, we've been under contract with the service for a while now, we know that rolling it out too soon, before all of the pieces are in place, is a recipe for failure, and we don't want that. So I would love your input if you have some on some best practices for getting that information to teachers, but we're definitely.
I just know it's hard because there's so much, and I have 2 different places with apps here and apps
Right,
here,
right.
and how do you get to this, and how do you everything's not in one great little location.
Right.
It's just not.
That's right.
And then you're like, you don't have the day to spend, and I'm not going home at night and sitting for 4 hours because I don't
Exactly.
have the time to do that. Like,
Right. And that's why, the content in here is going to be North Carolina Standards Aligned, so that you're not having to also do that while you're
To
out there
find the
Googling,
standards, that's
right?
right.
And then the other thing too is that single sign-on service was really important to us. That was important, so that it's not one more login you have to remember, but that rather it lives in that environment. I'm sorry, it's Susan that's going to kick me out of
Sorry.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for letting me share. Obviously, if you'd like a half-day session or a full-day session, I'm happy to come back. Yes, sir.
The socio-emotional that you were just
Yes.
talking, is that up and going now?
It is not. So that's one of one of the things we have planned in November is to build out 4 strategic hubs, so that when teachers come in December, they already have some exemplars. And one of the hubs we thought would be a fantastic win-win all the way around is to have a hub on social emotional.
Oh, I need it bad.
So absolutely. So I've already been working with with a counselor or consultant to say, let's sit down and talk about the vision for that hub and what we can go ahead and put in it so that in December, folks can see that that's a resource they can jump right into.
It would be nice if there's some way we get notifications.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
As far as when like this has been added to.
Yes,
So we can look at, that can sort of help me picking and choosing
That's right.
and.
Exactly what it
Absolutely.
is. Like, it's gonna
Yes.
have to tell teachers, here's
This-
what it is,
that's
here's
right.
what's available.
That's right.
And not a 5-page document that you're gonna have to sit down. I mean,
No, I
I'm
agree.
gonna say delete.
And
You know,
done.
like,
Exactly,
when you
exactly.
get all these emails and
Yes.
that's all.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
we
so
appreciate
so if you agree, I would love to go ahead and add you to my my growing communications list for Go Open NC. And then I've been talking with communications about building a Gov Delivery topic on Go Open NC so that folks can opt into that information, but that also would be easy for us to be able to disseminate updates and things like that to let you know when new stuff is out. So thank you for that. That's a good suggestion.
I'd love to do a test drive on that social
Oh,
emotion.
absolutely. Okay, that sounds great.
So
That
I'll
sounds
send you
great.
their email
Thank you.
addresses, the
Yes,
council.
perfect, thank you. Thank you for
Thank
letting
you.
me go over my time as well. I apologize.
I want to
Thank you.
thank Donna for her excitement and passion. I'm as passionate about my comprehensive needs assessments as she is about this, so I'm excited to somebody else who just kind of goes crazy for the work. A couple of things to think about. I think it's important to remember the spectrum we have across the state. So while we have some teachers who have an overabundance of resources, we have some teachers in districts where there are not a wide availability of resources. So they're really desperate for those types of resources. Chairwoman Locklear, I'd like to ask the council to consider how they'd like to move forward. This information is certainly a discussion item today. Is it something they would like to think about and have an action item on at the next meeting, or is it something they want to go ahead and have some discussion around appointing some people to develop a hub, or just need to think about it a little more? So I'll turn it back over to you.
You know, I think it's wonderful. I think maybe we can have some thoughts, a little bit of time, maybe at our next meeting, think about how we want to proceed with the HUD or the collection. I just think that based on several our conversations we've had today and even in the past, we just see the need for this, getting information to teachers, making sure that they have the accurate information as it relates to who we are as people. So maybe at our next meeting, we can have that on the agenda, Dr. Silver, and just go ahead and decide if we want to just be thinking about whether we want to have the HUD collect. I kind of like the HUD. I'm just throwing this out there because I'm thinking we could, because we have 8 state recognized tribes, we could have them separated and talk so much in detail about each one. So every tribal community has their own little area where you can go in there and you can find something. Say I want to know about the Lumbee because I have Lumbee children in my class. Say I want to know more about the Halawasa Pony because I have more of that group in my class. So they can go and select instead of having everything pushed all together in one piece. That's just my thoughts. I'm just throwing that out there. So we can think about it and be ready for it
And all
next
that's
time.
already written up, so there's not like because it's on the module
Right.
about each tribe.
Well,
It's not like
kinda
you're having to
separated in the
reinvent the
module
wheel.
too,
It's already
right.
there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And the other piece that I think is a real advantage of the hub is that the material may have better exposure to all teachers, because teachers will be coming, we hope, on a regular basis, logging in, and it will have better visibility. Native American Indian resources, especially those items that we begin to endorse by SACIE, will have good visibility out there.
And while I'm thinking about this, and it's on my mind, maybe we can make sure, because I'll forget probably next week, so I'm going to say it while I have it. But reaching out again with our tribal communities and having them to give us the input that they would like. We want to make sure that we're embracing them as well as we develop these PowerPoints and tidbits of information that we want to share with teachers.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you again for that information, Ms. Murray. We really do appreciate it. Okay, now we're moving on. Our agenda is our planning session for our educational summit. As I spoke with you before lunch, we have a location, and it is in Greensboro. We were trying to get somewhere kind of centralized so everybody could have. It wouldn't be so far for everybody to drive, kind of central location, and we have that. And I just want to take an opportunity here to thank Maya at the back. She is the Indian Ed coordinator for Guilford County, and we've been playing email tag and phone tag back and forth during the summer to see if we can get this, and with Dr. Oxnine, she's been working closely with us too. And we have been able to secure this place. Now, she called during lunch and she has the dates, so can you throw those up for us? Dr. Silver's working on that. Like to look at our calendars. I know the first week I've already talked to Miss Dorothy, and I think that first Friday is the next commission meeting. So we definitely have to stay away from.
What's the date of that? I'm sorry. Do you know what the next commission meeting date is?
List.
It's the first Friday in December.
It's hard to see it this
Pull
way.
up the calendar
It's not
right
as easy
now.
as
Let me-
seeing it in a calendar form. Sorry. That's okay.
They're always the first Friday, right, Miss Dorothy?
on
So
my
that
phone,
commission
so
meeting is the
tiny.
6th.
Yes.
So I know she has the 2nd, I think she said the 2nd, okay, there we go. We've got the 2nd and the 3rd, a Monday and a Tuesday. Those 2 days are available.
Okay.
Are those 2 days available? What?
So available are December 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Okay. We go too
can't quite
deep
figure out how
into
to read this
December.
form.
Everybody's getting ready for Christmas. There's so much going on. It's kind of tough. So, that 2nd is on a Monday. That might be okay. Drive up on that, those of us that are farther away that night and just stay that night and be ready for the next day. Those that are close.
See, the third is used. It's just kind of like,
What do you think of Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we're good.
That's coming off Thanksgiving weekend.
Mm-hmm. That Monday might be tough, hadn't it? What about that Tuesday? Is that still too? Do you have anything the second? Is there anything the second week, or is it just that Monday and Tuesday?
I don't know.
are you pulling up the calendar?
Come sit beside me.
I'm sorry,
What
this,
other days do you have available?
am I
So
allowed to
there's
speak?
something, yeah, no.
Okay, sorry, she was sending us a live, her calendar that showed what was available today, so she was trying not to send too much, so that's why she sent it in this form. So sorry, I know it's hard to read, but, so what's available is the 2nd, which is a Monday, but you think that's too tight? The 4th is a Wednesday, 5th is a Thursday, and the 6th is a Friday. Those are available.
Okay. Well, I know we can't do the 6th. That's out. Definitely can't do that. What about Tuesday? I like to kind of stay away from Wednesday. You know how our people are. We're
The
church.
day doesn't show up, it's available.
We have a lot of.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
know, but
I
it's
mean,
hard
I
to-
want to entertain. You have to know
Absolutely.
your audience when you're planning any events. And people in I mean, that's just the way
Show up.
our folks are. So Wednesday's going to be
Out.
yeah. And then Friday is the commission meeting, so I would hate for them to have to drive Thursday and Friday back to back. You know, don't you think so, Miss Rowe? So,
That Tuesday's not available, right?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
That Tuesday,
Tuesday, which one?
the third.
The 3rd is not.
Right.
So it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Monday?
oh, so it's not Tuesday. Oh.
Monday,
oh.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Let me look.
Maybe that 5th, that Thursday.
What do you think of that, Miss Grove, that Thursday?
When is our next SACIE meeting?
That's tough, isn't it? Do you have anything the second week?
Second week, let's go back up. Let's see, the 9th. The 9th is occupied, the 10th is, the 11th. No. Looks like, though, there might be on the 12th. That's a Thursday. Did you say Thursday was bad?
Right.
That's kids.
That's not all. That is just 3 rooms. So there's other rooms. They have 2 buildings. So there's more space. So that 12th may be available with another building.
It's gonna be tough. I got a basket meeting.
Does all rooms mean all rooms available or taken?
No,
Taken.
what's showing here is what's taken.
If you're looking for the dates that are missing on this side, that's what's available. These are all taken. What he was saying is here, if it's only indicating one room, that might show some possibility because it means all the other rooms, there's only one being used.
So where is this location?
It's in, so north of Greens, it's part of Guilford County Schools, but the address is Summerfield. It's,
Is it a staff development
it
center?
is. It was a former school. So
Oh.
there's a large meeting room and then there's breakout
I
rooms.
see.
So that's why on this calendar, so you could see multiple rooms are occupied, and I said, well, gee, will we have space? She said, well, there's plenty of other rooms, and there's another building with extended classrooms.
Are you trying to keep it before January?
I mean, we don't have to. We could move it to January. What do y'all think? Would you, December looks tight, doesn't it?
December will be tight.
Yeah, it's a busy time. What about, do you have anything for January?
I can call her. I'll call her. Be back.
And November is so close. Another thing, November is Indian Heritage Month, and what happens in November, you have a lot of your tribal leaders that are in different events, and that's just going to be a tough month to get them to narrow them down to a day because they've probably already planned out some of their different events.
Plus, it's only a month away.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of planning to do.
So you want me to check on January?
Yeah,
Okay,
January.
I'll call her.
January would be better. Clean year.
While she's checking on those dates, what we could do is go ahead and start thinking about the last time we talked about this educational summit, we talked about the tribal consultation piece and having an event where we could bring in our tribal communities and our leaders from our schools to make sure that everybody truly understands tribal consultation and what it entails. And I know that Dr. Wells, did he say he was leaving? Did I hear?
He's leaving.
This is his last day.
He'd been a perfect guest speaker. We
He
need to
may come
contact
back
him and
and
see if he can
speak.
still come
He
back.
could do the- Yeah, he could.
He may do speaking arrangements. You never
Yeah,
know.
see if he can still
Especially
come back,
now.
be part of that, because
I
I
bet he'd
think
love it.
he's really he really understands this. And actually, I spoke to someone in the Office of Indian Education, and they knew him, so that's another plus that he understands a little bit about the grant itself and what it entails. So, could we, when we finalize this date, Dr. Silver, could we just reach out to him and see if it's a possibility that he could maybe come back?
Changed his name and number, sure.
Before he
Well,
goes
we're
on
saving
the-
money. We won't have to pay for a location. That's a blessing. So that's wonderful. We'll have a location. We don't have to spend any money for that. That's great. And I also talked with Dr. Silver earlier in reference to this. If we could get Dr. Wells to speak, if he's available to come back and just reiterate what he shared with districts, because I'm sure some of the tribal leaders have not heard what he has talked about, and then just giving them a heads up on things that are changing from in legislation. I'm talking about not just North Carolina, I'm talking about nationwide as it relates to grant and different things. I know that we have a meeting with Washington at NIEA, and I forgot to mention that. They have asked me to speak too. Can you believe that they've asked a state-recognized person to speak to all of our federally recognized tribes? Whoa!
What do we know? Maybe are you recognized?
Hey, I am recognized. They may not think I am, but I am. But I'm saying, you know what I'm saying.
I know.
That a lot of times when we have state recognized individuals, they're like, "Oh, you're state, okay." But it's just nice to be at the table. But anyway, the information that we hear from that meeting and what they share with us, we could bring back and report too. Because a lot of our a lot of our districts and our NCED programs, some of them don't attend this meeting. Because, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it is an expensive conference. And a lot of their grants are so small that they don't have the funding to do that. So I'm just blessed that I get to attend those meetings. So we could bring that back and share. Then what we talked about is having the breakout rooms where the tribal communities and the district leaders could sit together, have that conversation, and talk about, as after Dr. Wells gives his input on what tribal consultation truly looks like, for them to have that conversation and talk about how they're going to make sure that they're implementing tribal consultation with fidelity. So those are my thoughts. Now, this is what I need from you. I need y'all to talk to me. I need input. Dr. Ox and I seem like we're monopolizing.
I'm going to be quiet.
You go right. No, you don't. You continue. I need somebody else to talk besides me.
Well, is this going to be a day-long conference?
I think so. Is Dr. Miss Dorothy? The last time we had Educational Summit, it was one day, correct? That was, I think that was right before I came on. That was several years ago. And I think during that time, I think you were here too, Dr. Ox and I.
I did greetings from the state board.
Mm-hmm. And I think Susan Fairclough, Dr. Fairclough was here. And I can't remember, we had several different, we had little breakout rooms on one of them.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, Dr. Ox? Now, how do you foresee this happening?
Oh, I think the consultation theme is very good because it's new, and the more you can spread the word to the various tribes and other stakeholders about the importance of it, I think it's a good way to broadly discuss it. Then the rest of the day, you'd have to format. What do you want to do is maybe have small workshops, small group presentations, because it sounds like the facility will have space for breakouts, opportunities.
She said there were several breakout rooms. So I guess the other thing is we need to determine what's our time frame. That's another issue. Are we still looking at the same time frame we use here, 10 to 3?
You're gonna have people coming from out of the area who are driving in that morning. You can't start it at 8.
No, I
It's too
wasn't
early.
thinking 8 at all.
I would
I'm just saying
probably go maybe a little bit past 3. I don't
10
know.
to 3:30, 10 to 4.
I guess depending on the date of the week too, because if it's like a Friday, everybody, like, traffic gets busy at 4 o'clock as opposed to 6 something, whatever, around that area. Anyhow, I notice like everyone's leaving like around 4. The roads get busy.
Here too.
Yeah, sure.
Probably need a theme. You want to tie it to consultation, and if you want to
Yeah.
build off the State Board of Education, I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah, I'm
Food
glad
for
you
thought.
are, because I want someone else to throw some stuff out and help me too.
Maybe if you want to build around the theme of picking up on a little bit on the State Board's theme of equity.
I
Yes,
think
that's
that
what I
would
was
be
gonna
good. I think
Yes.
equity,
Mhm.
yes. Tribal consultation and
And
equity
equity.
among American Indian students.
Dr. Locklear, sorry. I had also mentioned to Dr. Locklear earlier, there is a Lumbee educator who was second runner-up for Teacher of the Year. I think it would be a great encouragement and a good thing to have her as a spotlight speaker. That's something they commonly do anyway, so that's something to certainly think about.
I think
North
that-
Carolina?
Yes. Miss Eddings, I think that would be great.
Oh, yes, I know her.
And I confirmed it. Somebody else who was nodding had told me she was in it. So I talked to Dr. Locklear when I was
She
like, can
is.
you confirm this for me?
She's actually one of our tribal members' sister,
Council members, right?
tribal council members yet.
She's a
Tribal-
UNCP graduate, too.
So I think that would be a great time to highlight.
So that would be great. We could have her as a guest speaker, and then we could have, I think it would be nice also when we bring our tribal leaders in from all of our, to, of course, take time to recognize all of them, and have her to speak. If we could get Dr. Wells to come back to speak, we could have, probably by the time that takes place and everybody with their introductions that morning, lunch around 12, then we could have our little breakout sessions in the afternoon where people could have that. I think dialogue is very important. We could have that conversation about what tribal consultation looks like, what the district is looking, what the district is looking at it, what the tribe's looking at, how we can come together, how we can work together to make sure that we are meeting those needs so that we don't lose funding. And I think that is the big piece, losing funding, because as Dr. Wells said, if we don't have that piece in place, we lose money. We can't afford to lose money. So is there anything else? Would you think of something else?
Well, you might want to give, I'm thinking of the block of time, so you'll have to deal with something to take place after lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to have a breakout session on, I don't know. Do you want to talk about the development of the annual report anywhere during the conference?
We could.
I don't know. Get some ideas from the group, talk about,
You know, that might be good, what you just said, talk about the report, and then we could reiterate the recommendations.
yes,
Have one on culturally responsive instruction.
We could have cultural,
For the
let's write
teachers.
these down. The culturally responsive instruction, what it looks like, and we can talk about some of these issues we've had already.
you might want to do something along the line of what Dorothy is saying, maybe a couple of specific sessions, and maybe have a wrap up to talk about the annual report for maybe about 20 minutes.
Okay.
Culturally responsive would be a good topic, and maybe one other.
Could we have Ms. Murphy maybe to come in and talk about that platform? Because if we have educators coming and representatives from the different LEAs, and that platform would also be something that they take back, is they may have heard it, but it's going to be rolled out in December, so that'll be it to the forefront. And if we have our PD for teachers incorporated in that, then that'll be an easier way for them to access it. They put Native Americans, they hit a spot, say, get some CEUs. And when you talk about being culturally corrective, then they can go in there. Maybe some teachers need those CEUs for credits, or they're teaching those Native American kids that, American Indian kids, students, and that it'll be the doorway to go in to start that part of getting themselves back on board with our students, that part of that resource that they're going to offer.
So make sure that we have time to share breakout room. We could do like 3 breakout rooms, 20 or 30 minutes. We could talk about
30
culturally
minutes.
responsive instruction, what it looks like, why it's important, what it does to our children's self-esteem. And then when we could leave that, when we could say, now let me show you, we talked about culturally responsive instruction. Let's go over here and let me show you how to access this module. And then go in, and I actually did that recently, where I went in and did a workshop to show them how. And if any you wanted, I've already have it in place, because I did screenshots. I'll show them exactly how to go in and access it.
I was gonna say, I
And
think
then-
you'd be remiss if you didn't have a workshop on the modules, but not just showing them the modules. Maybe the workshop is around, here's some strategies we've developed to promote it. So because that's what you've been saying. How do we get teachers to it? Somebody's got to sit down and do some brain work around what are some strategies, whether it's flyers, whether that's rapid email, what are some strategies to drive teachers to that website?
Might be a very good session, and
To that
just have
module.
people, have the participants throwing out ideas, strategies to communicate and access.
I mean, do you think you're gonna have teachers, I'm being devil's advocate here, are you gonna have teachers coming to this? Because as a teacher, I can't take a day off. It's
I don't
not,
know
it
if
wouldn't
we-
be
I don't know
considered
if we're gonna
professional
have as many
development.
teachers. I think it's more about district leaders and tribal consultation members. Tribal members. But now, if districts want to send teachers, they can, but that's gonna be left up to, well, I'm just saying, that's a
I just don't
district.
think districts will.
Well, I'm saying
Okay, for a
the
teacher to
tribal
go.
consultation piece really is more about your district leaders that are signing off on your grants, and your tribe. Those are the people that are signing off on your grants. So it's about those, but the whole point of it, going back to what you said with that, how to make sure that they're going to this module and that we're getting the word out. Once we share that with tribal leaders, the hope is that they will go back and say, this is what, as they're talking to the districts, this is what we expect your districts to be doing. This is what we would like to see, not expect, but that's not a good, but this is what we would like to see. Because that tribal consultation piece is an opportunity for districts and the tribal leaders to sit down and work on the grant together. It's not that, here's my grant and you sign off on it. So tribal leaders have an opportunity to voice their opinion about what they would like to see. So Miss Crow's the tribal leader. She might say, you know, we have this module developed, and we would really like to make sure that the teachers within this county are utilizing this module.
Or do you think the overview on consultation during the morning, is there any reason that something needs to be really pulled out from consultation to roll into an afternoon 30-minute session? I mean, is it that in-depth and that technical that you would need to do small group sessions around it?
The only thing I would say about small group sessions is that conversation piece between your tribe and your leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could talk about what tribal consultation entails, and I think Dr. Wells did a really good job driving that home today. I mean, I think he would be a really good voice. But I think even though we say that, a lot of times tribal leaders, when he's doing these regional meetings, the tribal leaders aren't in those meetings. So if you got your tribal leaders and your district leaders sitting at the table at the same time, hearing the same information, nobody can say, well, we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can have that conversation. And when we had our tribal consultation meeting, it took a lot longer than we expected, because as you're sharing your grant and somebody's asking you, well, give me a little bit more detail about that. Talk to me a little bit now how, and they want to know. And that, I just think that conversation, that dialogue would be great for tribal leaders and district leaders to talk about. I mean, that's just my opinion.
So that should be done from 10 until 12.
Well, I think the early morning we need to tell them what it looks like first,
Mm-hmm.
and have Dr. Wells to
Keynote
speak.
speaker.
Right, and then have the second runner-up, Miss Eddings, to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe after that, maybe that could be 1 hour, and then that next hour we go right into that conversation piece. Then we have lunch, and then we could do breakout sessions.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out. Y'all help me out. What you think, Dr. Locklear?
Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah.
Ms. Lauren? Dr. Lowry, I'm sorry. Miss Dorothy? You speak to us as a tribal leader. What would you like to see?
Consultation, definitely. And then, probably more on the equity stuff too.
Yeah.
And I think once, if we have those sessions, that could ties right back into tribal consultation.
Right.
How are we providing equitable opportunities for our American Indian students?
Right.
This might also be an opportunity to provide a space for district people in the American Indian community to hear one another
Right.
on an issue that arose in the spring over the feathers and graduation. Just to present a platform, it might be students that are on that, just a forum is where you have, a panel of 7 sharing and a fishbowl sharing. Here's how we feel, not necessarily looking for a resolution, but just here's a voice to that. I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm just saying that's something that came up, and I feel like it's a little, even though there are lots of sensitivities around it, it would seem kind of awkward if this group didn't give a voice to that in some way, not make a recommendation perhaps, but give a voice to that. So that's certainly one option. But my bigger point is around planning. What needs to come out of today is probably identifying, here are the subset of people who are going to work on this. Here's our date to meet outside of this group to work on planning that. And then I've got some dates for January.
Okay.
And
that Mia's
actually,
been able to
Dr.
pull.
Silver, that kind of discussion around I think that grew out of my region.
Yeah. Well, there's been, quite a few students who have been on the news about it. We had a situation of a student in Warren County who advocated for that. It was on WRL. So there was an incident from that region, but I think
I vividly remember it.
Yeah.
Because I had to get involved in it.
oh, sorry.
But where I'm going with that is that does tie into the theme of equity.
Sure.
It's an equity topic.
So we have
January, I've gone through the portal,
15th is on a
15th,
Wednesday.
16th, 17th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. So basically from that.
17th is on a Friday. What about, is a Friday a good day?
It's fine with me.
Which day is the Martin Luther King holiday? Does anybody know off the top of their head?
The 20th.
I'm sorry, Ms. Crowe. when
The
might be-
20th is
the
the
20th.
Martin Luther King holiday.
Yes. Let's see, I got that big somewhere.
Then you jump down 28th and 29th are open.
Well, the thing of that 20th being a holiday, people might take the 17th to have a long weekend. Let's see. What about the 23rd? That's a Thursday.
That's a good day, Thursdays.
For the schools that carry over to January being the end of the semester, that usually comes in close with Martin Luther King Day, doesn't it?
It's usually
Or
not
our-
that last. Mm-hmm.
So suppose we move it to the last week of January, when you're finished with, you're already back from the holidays.
Testing's over.
You're
with.
back from the Martin Luther King Day. What's on the calendar for,
The 28th they have there is available. That's
the
a Tuesday.
administrators and all at the end of January? What's on the calendar for administrators at the end of January? Is there a conference or something else going on that you know of?
Not from the state agency. For districts, it would vary depending on
Yeah.
how the calendars close out.
It's a good day.
$28th? Does that look okay?
It's a Tuesday.
It's a good.
That's on a Tuesday? Is that okay with you, Dr. Lowry? What about everyone over here? Is that okay? 28th?
Can we get a motion and a vote, Dr. Lockwood? Can we get a motion and a vote, please? The date,
Make a motion?
to approve the date.
Okay.
I move that we set aside January 28th, 2020 for the educational summit.
Okay.
The 28th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Still writing down.
28. And did we say the time will be 10 to 3? Or 10 to 4?
And that's, it's good.
That way people that have to drive in won't have to drive in so early.
Probably finish before 4 anyway.
And that'll give, Ms. Crowe, that'll actually give you a little bit of time to, because you'll have your next commission meeting in December. And we can get it out then.
Oh,
So
yeah.
who are you planning on, who are we, I guess, planning on extending this invitation out to? Tribal leaders,
Tribal leaders and your district leaders.
District Central Office.
And Indian education.
And your Indian Ed directors. Your Indian Ed directors, your tribal
the
leaders, your
district
district
leaders
leaders.
as in superintendents?
That's who I mean when I say district
District
leaders.
leaders.
Mhm.
And the folks who manage and coordinate the IEA programs.
Right.
And like instructional staff, curriculum people.
Yeah.
Should be there, technology.
I think especially those individuals in the school districts that are responsible for signing off on these grants, like ever who's in charge of your federal programs.
Yes.
That person needs to be here most
Absolutely.
definitely because that's part of tribal consultation. your travel chairs.
So like in Guilford County, they have their Guilford Native Association, those associations as well.
I mean, if the
Yeah.
association would like to attend, that would be fine, but even in Gifford County,
I don't
the
know.
person that would sign off on yours would be the Lumbee tribe, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, even with Guilford County and Wake, and with Robinson and Hoke and Scotland and Cumberland, all of those would be, the person that would sign off on that would be the Lumbee tribe, because that's the largest, population they have within those counties.
I'll do everything I can as a state board member to get the leverage of the state board behind this in some form of a letter from the chairman, a resolution perhaps recognizing the summit opportunity. Will do.
Do you think it will be for one of those breakout sessions for the commission to speak?
Well, of course, we want the commission here, and a lot of your commission members are your tribal leaders anyway. So that's why I just spoke to Ms. Crow and mentioned to her, since she's a member of the commission, that she can share that at a December meeting and make sure that they're aware of this meeting and they can be here. And at the last meeting that I spoke at, when we had North Carolina Unity, I mentioned the Educational Summit, and several of the individuals that serve on commission came up and said they wanted to see this event take place. So they're excited too.
So your number-wise, what, a little bit over, what, 125 maybe?
Well, I think when we talked earlier, we said around between 150 to 200. We might not have that many at all, but I'm just saying 100. It's better. I just like to go over.
Well, that's the tricky thing with planning for things like
150, let's say 150 max.
So my ask would be that you all appoint a subcommittee of 3, and we set up a webinar for 2 weeks from now, whenever, to start the planning. Because what I don't want anybody to underestimate is the legwork it's going to take to plan this one around, to your point, who's coming. Yeah. This cannot be, I'm going to send out an email and hope people show up. One thing you need for this to be successful is attendance. And it's going to take everybody at this table taking a list of folks, email, call, face-to-face if needed, because you have to have those people at the table if you want to show that this is something relevant, and everybody's going to have to take a piece of that. So I want to stress that as we go forward. So we need some solid action steps of who's going to be, because you can't plan something like that in this large context. Right. I certainly understand that. So there's going to have to be a subcommittee who then takes that on and assigns parts to other folks. But there's got to be those 3 or 4 who take that and meet before, because obviously there won't be a meeting between now and then.
I mean, I'll be on the committee.
When is the next SACIE meeting?
You all have not said that yet.
I haven't said that yet. We have to do the survey.
Yes, we'll send the.
Any idea what month is our next one? Usually?
So you have them quarterly. So this is your fall meeting. So your next meeting will be your winter meeting. So think winter months.
So what I'd like to be able to do at the next state board meeting is to announce, are we ready to announce the date? That needs to be pretty much nailed down before I do anything as far as an announcement to the state board.
So,
and I still have time because this is just our October meeting.
So Maya, can you confirm that we can have that room? It's already confirmed?
She sent us the link, so I'll send it to Dr. Silver and you that confirms the room. Once we do that link and put your name in there, then it holds the room for us.
Okay, once we can confirm, and the motion's already been made, second and passed, then I would say yes. I think for us on this committee, our job is to reach out to our tribal communities and tell our LEAs. I think Dr. Oxendine just stated the most valuable point here that's going to get our folks here at the state board, the resolution and the chairman to support this, and this is what the expectation is of the state board, then your district leaders are going to be there with that. So if that takes place, then I think we have Miss Dorothy with the commission, and she'll make sure she and Mr. Greg Richardson that is pushed from that effort, and then the rest of us here can ensure that we reach out. I know I can make sure that I can share this with as many of our Title VI directors as possible. And you have that list too, do you not, Dr. Silver? Can you get that list out to that?
It's on the website, but I'm certainly
Okay.
happy to push it out to
We
everyone
can get
again.
that information to them, and I have some names and numbers of several, so I can call them also and share that information. So,
Is this also going to be opened up to charters?
I think with charters, if they have a consortium agreement, like I have a consortium agreement with the CIS Academy and with the ISD, but I don't know if they fall under that umbrella.
They're a
of tribal
public, I would say they're a public entity. If you're trying to get to 150, I don't think you're to the point yet of turning down people. We're not to that point yet. We're not at that point where we're excluding
They
people
receive
yet.
Indian education funds also.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially the cultural responsiveness there. I mean, they need to have that as well.
yeah. I think that we just need to. At this point, my whole thing is I'm talking about our children, and if somebody wants to come and figure out what's the best way to improve success and achievement for our children, and how we can, and I say our children because they are ours, and what we can do to improve, I say let them be at the table.
So this is going to be, part of the audience, or a major part of the audience will be our tribal leaders.
Sure.
That is from the 18, how many state recognized?
18 districts.
18
I
districts,
think
but,
it's 18 affected LEAs. I think that's correct.
and then each tribe. Yeah, I'm just trying to do some rough mathematics in my head. I want to be clear about two things. It's not so much the numbers. Then you can let me know, Dr. Silver and Dr. Locklear, sometime next week. The audience, who is the anticipated audience? And that would be our district leaders, and then our tribal leaders across the state. And then the date, the time, and the location. And that will suffice as far as my announcing to the state board. And then involving the chairman of the state board in a letter.
By November, is that what you're thinking? Because your next state board meeting is next week, isn't it?
It is.
The October one is next week.
It could wait until November.
Okay, because in November, if everything gets settled, we can come up with a nice graphic. I can get a graphics department to work on creating something really nice.
Absolutely
I want to
great.
stress my 3 people who are going to webinar with me either next week or the week after, because speakers is your next thing. You have to get those speakers nailed down and get you on their books.
Dr. Wells for sure. So if we can get that. Tribal leaders, district leaders, IEA directors, and coordinators. Those would be I think that would be our audience. And of course, SACIE, and state board.
Do you want to see if you can get Representative Graham?
Well, Representative Graham is part of SACIE. He's not.
That's right, he is.
So you need 2 more people?
I have.
She's talking about for the planning.
Tiffany.
Looking at my schedule.
Sorry.
My schedule's pretty tight,
Really.
but I need. I just got the week.
To be a subcommittee, planning committee.
Oh,
Well, what we can do is we can have our 3 individuals there, and then what we can, after we have our webinar, we could just shoot that information out to everybody so everybody's aware of what's happening, and then you can just respond back by email.
If you want, if you need a 3rd, I'll be more than glad to help you.
Okay, there we have it.
I can help if needed. So who do I have?
I volunteered as
Dr.
the state
Locklear.
board liaison.
Who's my Miss LaRonda? Sorry, Dr. LaRonda. Is that the 3?
So we got it. Myself, Dr. Oxenine, Dr. Lowry, and we could just shoot once we have this webinar, then we can shoot the information
Yes,
out.
you all will be getting tasks. I want to be very clear about this. Everyone will be getting tasks to carry out.
Now, let's please not plan this in 2 weeks unless we plan it that. I'm gonna be at NIEA, you know, that's the conference. The first week of the first full week of October is the conference. So, and that's gonna be kind of tight.
Can we maybe look at our schedules and see if we can have our next SACIE meeting before this? If we're doing a winter meeting, possibly have it in December to do final logistics and final, I mean, you're gonna have, there's no way to plan something like this unless you meet about it. I would assume.
Or a webinar.
Let's see what Dr. Silver has on. That sounds,
This is gonna be, this will take some work,
yeah, that sounds.
be fun.
Do it in November.
Did you hear that, Dr. Silver?
I did not.
Connie
Anyway, we could
mentioned
plan
that,
our next
we have
SACIE
our next-
meeting.
I can send out the link with the dates. You all have to fill it out and commit to those dates. So yeah,
Okay.
so, I mean, we could send out a, what do you call it?
Survey. Survey monkey?
What else? Yes, the calendar thing. Where you forget
For the webinar, WebEx,
the word is going out of my
our
mouth.
small committee,
Anyway, y'all know what I'm talking about.
that's all I need.
No, it's not a calendar invite.
Just give me
It's to
dates,
get to
I'll
select,
follow.
like I'm a free
Okay.
this date, this date, this date.
We definitely need you on our meeting.
But it's called something.
Tiffany, I'm sorry. didn't mean
Okay,
to
so
put
what
you
we
on
can look for is we can look for an upcoming WebEx conference with the three of us that'll be part of this. And then those of you that are not part of the small meeting, we'll shoot everything out to you so you make sure everybody's on board and everybody's aware of what's happening. And I think Dr. Silver's gonna send out a link so we can go ahead and register for the next SACIE meeting. Hopefully as Connie had mentioned, maybe we can have it before January so we can have an opportunity to talk about this educational summit before it actually begins on the 28th. I know it's a lot, but I do think we can pull it off. I do think we can.
Now that you've pushed back the date.
Yeah, now that we put, yeah, I think we got a little bit more time. And we've got a lot of help. Dr. Oxnine's gonna help us with our district leaders from the state board, Ms. Crow with our tribal leaders, and then the rest of us with our Indian education. I'll be contacting a bunch of those, and all of us can talk with our leaders within our district and make them aware of it as well. So I'm excited about that, y'all.
But as soon as we can, we can know the place and the date, we can send out a save the date, so
Okay.
people can go ahead and put it on their calendars.
We got that now. As soon as she gives us clarity and it's put on that link, then we're gonna go ahead and hit save the date. Send it out, get it to you as soon as we can. This already confirmed?
Right now, she's in there typing it in.
Oh,
She's on the place
Oh,
where you
okay.
save it.
how wonderful. Maybe before we leave today, we'll have a saved date. That's great. Okay, time's flying by with us. Okay, let's see. Discussion items. Dr. You're typing away. We'll come back to you. So Dr. Silver is going to discuss our state accountability data, subgroup data. SACIE module, I think we've already had a bunch of discussion around that, so we can just kind of leave
Add to
that. And then
Actually-
we'll jump into our SACIE report, our theme, and our recommendations. We're working on this, but next time, I'm gonna go ahead while Dr. Silver's trying to finish that up. We really need to be thinking about our theme and what recommendations. We have those recommendations already. I would encourage you to go back and pull the SACIE report, look at those recommendations that we have, and how do we want to revise them? Do we want to keep them? Do we want to add some things to them? I think with some of what we've heard today will kind of help us with those themes. And some of those themes that we already, those recommendations, some of those recommendations we already have correlate with the conversations we had today. So I guess at our next meeting, we can start thinking about our theme for our next report. And the last report we had, the theme we focused on equity, and I think that's still an area we need to focus on. So, Dr. Silver, are you ready for
Sure,
data?
that's right.
Okay.
So a couple things on the SACIE module. So one thing that had been requested at the last meeting was about access so we can continually update them and kind of what's going on in the system. So we found out a couple interesting things when we reached back to Dr. Sani. There isn't a way to provide access to anybody who's not an educator who has Canvas. So that's one thing. There is also no internal process in DPI. There's no, to borrow a phrase from earlier, there's no one minding the shop who goes in and, you send them your updates and they update it. There's also no one who, once somebody completes it, sends them something saying you've completed this module, here's how many hours you completed, which is, DPI doesn't give out those anyway. So a district is the one who gives out CEUs anyway. So I don't know if that's either here nor there, but the important thing for us to know is there's not a person who's sitting there going, okay, 5 people this week completed the SACIE module, let me send them this. So that's one thing we need to know. So the last stats that we got from Dr. Sani is that there are a total of 188 people registered for the course. Registered but not complete is 93, which means they're at some phase of completion of it, but haven't completed it yet. And the total number of people who have completed it, done all the pieces, are 95.
Can you narrow it down even more to find out where
I'm not sure.
those people are located?
I'm not sure.
Because I know you said it was.
That number should double in the next couple of months because of this requirement with this module that we're having to do in the county.
Now, what we do have, so as the original team who created this was working on it, they had files they were working from in a Google Drive. So what is available, that if a committee wanted to work on the revising piece, we could certainly give access to those files, because these are the files that were then just put into the module. So that's what we do know.
So we could get a copy of the module files.
So you could, I can add anybody to that Google Drive that has those in there, and those are the files that went into it. So if, I know there had been discussion, I think Dr. Locklear was, Dr. Tiffany Locklear was going to head up that committee to work on where we needed updates, where the council needed updates or revisions. So why don't I start with you, Dr. Locklear? I give you access, and then you determine. I have to look back at the minutes to see who the other folks who were working with you.
Okay.
But I'll share those with you so you can send it out from there and kind of start organizing your committee, and I can set up webinars for you or whatever you need.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now
I'll
the
be
big,
added to that.
ask your chair, your committee chair.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the big item of discussion this afternoon is accountability data. The data went to the state board at their last meeting. It will be formally approved at the October meeting next week. So Dr. Briggs pulled that here for you. So you have several spreadsheets here to look at. I'm going to direct you to this overall data for American Indian students. She printed it all for you, each grade level for reading and math, but we're going to look at the big pieces, so I'll direct you to those. So I'm looking at the one that at the top it says 2018-19 North Carolina end of grade, end of course reading test results. So make sure you have the one that says reading. And we're going to look at reading 3 through 8. Really, you have all the individual grade levels, but I'm just going to focus you right there for today. You have a highlighter there if you want to highlight across. Kelly has shaded in gray the American Indian results, and you see how many students are proficient at each grade level. What you want to pay attention to is GLP and CCR, okay, which is grade level proficiencies. GLP, that means level 3, and your college and career ready proficiency means they're level 4 or 5, right? So you can track across and see how American Indian students scored. I would focus on the last 2 columns myself just for right now. And then you can see how all students, because you want to compare it to the overall state average at the very top. Okay, giving you just a minute to look at that one. If you go to page 4 of that same document, you'll see science combined scores for grade 5 and 8. And Kelly shaded the American Indian. And then 2 columns above that, you see all students, so you can track across and see that. Again, I would focus you on the GLP and CCR, so grade level proficiency and college and career ready. I'll give you a minute just to look at that, and then we'll move to math.
Oh, here we go.
This every student, or you have to have certain percentage at a school?
So if they don't have, if it's less than, oh God, help me, Dr. Hudson, less than 10%?
10%, right?
Yeah, then it
You
doesn't
have
show
to
up.
have 10% of American Indian students at your school to be on here,
Right,
or be
Well, to
put
be-
into this data.
right. Okay, so if everybody has a chance to look at that, I'm now gonna move, you have another packet, and at the top it says 2018-19 North Carolina end of grade and end of course math test results. Same thing, you have it broken out for each grade level, but I'm gonna focus on the combined scores for math 3 through 8. Third row down, fourth row down, you have American Indian, which is shaded in gray for you. Again, focusing you on the GLP and CCR, so grade level proficiency and college career readiness, and you can compare that with the all students subgroup to see how American Indian students performed. Got a minute to look at that. If you go to page 4, and I apologize, they aren't numbered at the bottom, they just don't print that way. Page 4, it says NC Math 1. And if you go to the bottom, because you'll see all the grade levels there, but I'm going to focus you on NC Math 1. You'll see American Indian highlighted. If you go up to above that, you can see how they compare it to all students in the state. I encourage you to particularly look at college and career, how many students scored at that level for Math 1. That number is 9.3%.
Do you know out of how many kids that is?
I don't.
Any idea?
If you go to the accountability website, it'll show you the denominator, but you'll have to go to the accountability, which there's a link to. So if you, there's a link there that says state accountability data, and you can look up all these pieces.
Oh my gosh. Dr. Silver, did you say that's Math 1, that's the 9.3?
Yes, for CCR, that means scoring a level 4 or 5, yes. Okay, if you go to the next page, you can see Math 3, and the American Indian is highlighted. Kind of takes your eyes to that. If you go up 2, you'll see how they compare it to all students.
Seventh grade? %. You're a math educator. What's the reason, Connie, for such a big drop from math 7th grade to math 8th grade? How does the curriculum change? Because it continues to drop from 7th grade on down, all the way to third,
And
math 3.
let me put this caveat out there for those who aren't aware. It was a new math assessment this year.
Okay.
So it's a completely new assessment this year. I mean, and I'm
Across
not
the
arguing that's
board?
either here nor there.
Is it across the board from 5th,
Across.
3rd grade up? All the way up?
There will be a new reading assessment next year. So if anybody doesn't know that, spread the word to your teachers. New reading assessment in the spring, based on new standards in the spring, so in May.
This coming year?
Oh, so
Across the state,
across the whole third grade up?
Dr. Down, I'll turn over to you.
Third grade up?
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, third grade up.
Right, I'm a little concerned that everybody doesn't know that, and they're educators in the room. That concerns me greatly.
Yeah.
And I ran into that as I got to the end of last year, where people were going, where principals telling me, I didn't know we were gonna have a new assessment. That's concerning, because you should have been teaching towards that new assessment all year. So spread the word. This purpose of councils like this is to spread the word.
Well, I'm telling you, across North Carolina, though, I have been concerned about mathematics for a long time, high school mathematics, in particularly because I'm afraid in 10 years, the reality, or sooner than that, the reality will hit us that we haven't produced mathematicians. We definitely aren't producing math educators in North Carolina, because they're not majoring in math.
I mean, and so much is connected with that, all your STEM
We have
careers.
got to do, folks, we've got to do something about it. Mathematics is in trouble. I'm not a mathematician, but I can I know enough math to read the data and understand it. And math has gone through a major shift in the way it's taught at the high school level. So if you want to think of some recommendations.
Major shift in how it's taught in elementary as well,
Yes.
just high school.
So you have a single sheet, and it says, other high school indicator results. So that's where you'll see your ACT work keys, your 4-year cohort graduation rate, and your 5-year cohort graduation rate. American Indian is highlighted for you. If you go 2 columns up, you'll see what it is for all students.
I would recommend that this, I know I'm out of line, so I won't put it in the form of a motion, because that's not my role really, but I would strongly urge the SACIE to think about a small committee, just to think about recommendations around mathematics based on these data.
So we have 3 math teachers in here.
Well, one of the things. One of the things, so I teach the Math 2 course, grades 3 through 6, at UNCP, and it's a mindset thing. Many of those students, they take Math 1, grades K through 2, and then they take me, which is grades 3 through 6, and they have a mindset, well, I'm going to teach 2nd grade because I don't need to learn fractions, or I'm going to teach 2nd grade or 1st grade, so I don't need to learn statistics. And it's really hard for me to get them engaged, and so I am doing a lot of hands-on and trying to prepare them for those progressions, and looking at, what you do in 2nd grade informs 3rd grade, and what you do in 3rd grade informs 4th grade. Yeah. And so I am the rigorous math teacher, and I am trying to produce teachers to go in and say, well, I don't like math, so I'm not going to teach math, because they're doing an injustice to our students. So that is one of the disconnects in elementary, is they want to be an elementary teacher, but they want to focus on the subjects, and we really need to get back to integration and teaching all subjects.
Well, go ahead.
And going back to what she said, a predictor for success in Math 1, which used to be called Algebra 1, is fractions. That's if when you look at the information and the research that goes behind all that, one of the biggest predictors for success in algebra is fractions. Students, if they don't get a foundation in elementary school where they don't understand base 10, number 1, they can't understand fractions. Then they don't understand fractions. Then they go to high school and they don't understand algebra. And, and just everything's a predictor for something else. So when you look at calculus, the predictor for calculus is algebra. So the problem is there's been such a paradigm shift in the way that mathematics is taught, that and the way the push of mathematics has changed. Many years ago when I taught math, what I taught in Algebra 2 is now taught in 8th grade. And so you have individuals that are teaching 8th grade math that have a concentration in math, or because they may be or in 6th, 7th grade, and like K6, you may have someone, as Tiffany, as Dr. Locklear just said over here, they may have a K6 certification and not fully understand math, and they may spend 5 years teaching kindergarten. And then all of a sudden this year, the principal moves them to 6th grade math. And that 6th grade math used to be what was taught in 8th grade. If you go back and look at the content that was taught in the later grades and compare it with what's taught now, that is the reason our teachers are struggling, because they don't have the mathematical depth of knowledge to understand the content itself. Therefore, it's difficult for them to teach it. And when you're not teaching the depth of knowledge of mathematics, then students just don't understand it. And that is the big paradigm shift that we have now. And that's where that has come from.
Well, I am prime example. I've taught 18 years, 16 in kindergarten. My administration pushed me to go to 4th grade this year. I have no idea what I'm teaching for math, besides looking at our CMAP lesson plans and reading them word for word every single day and putting it up on my Promethean board, because I have no idea what they've been taught the last 3 years. So for me, I'm a fish out of water. Like, I can't even breathe in my classroom this year because I have no idea what I'm teaching. And I haven't been to graduate school in 19 years, much less college, 25 years. So for me, it's, okay, what is DPI offering me? And here's my alignment lessons, and I'm teaching them word for word every single day, because if I'm teaching them word for word, then they should be fine on their end of testing.
There's
for
that
4th grade.
unpacking documents that has all those resources,
Yes,
and there's
that's what I was
actually
getting ready to say.
a math wiki that has
There
phenomenal
is,
resources.
but do you know how
with
much time it takes to sit and
direct
unpack all that?
links.
Like, I mean, it takes so much time to sit and unpack all of that information. And then you pull it up on CMAP and DPI, and the lesson plans here don't match what they're sending you in the box. Like, the packets don't match up. So then you're trying to figure out, oh, okay, well, what's the correct thing? So I'm prime example of that happening. I have no desire to teach 4th grade next year. Like, because I don't know what I'm doing in the classroom. Put me back down to K1.
So I think that's a great example of how we come back to leadership when we're thinking about a lot of recommendations. So as we maybe a recommendation comes out as principals or moving teachers, make sure we're providing the adequate professional development
That's right.
to support them in that, along with the cultural
Because I
responses.
had nothing walking in.
I think one of the things that I experienced in my county, like exactly what you're saying, you as a veteran teacher that's been in the classroom and taught, if you're having that struggle, look at the ones who's just being hired who has no education background whatsoever. In Granville County, that's happening every day. We're hiring people just to have bodies in there to teach, because there's such a huge shortage as far as teachers. And these folks have absolutely no education background whatsoever. And they're taking 1 or 2 classes in college, and then it's like all of a sudden they want to be a teacher, so they're being hired and they're coming in and they don't have any background, any experience.
Any education background.
Exactly. And so they're going through, they're muddling through.
Education
So
background.
that's what I'm saying. You as a veteran teacher, if you're having to muddle through to be able to do what needs to be done, look at these folks that have
barely keeping my head
no
above water.
background at all. And I think that's a huge issue that we have. Now, granted, when you look at these reading scores, yeah, they're decent, they're pretty good, but I mean, I think it's going to get worse.
I do too.
Because there's so many people that
think
are
people are just
getting out of
leaving.
the field of
Oh, yeah.
education. They're leaving it, and
Yeah.
we're losing them left and right.
Well, I have 4 years and I can retire, and y'all can hire me to come back and do math PD. I would love to just go in classrooms and do math PD.
What really bothers me, math in particular, when teachers give them tricks to learn instead of actually teaching them the concept. And I know my grandson in elementary school was with fractions, came home with all these tricks. And he could do the computation, but he had no idea of the concept, but he could work the problem. And that really, I think that happens a lot with math. Instead of making sure they know the concept, we just teach them the trick so they'll know what to do.
We've transitioned to children understanding the theory of math, and it's why we got such a disconnect between what our parents had learned, i.e. that would be me, and what our children learned, because we were taught And there's some place for that. We were taught all the tricks. And then when the kids come and say, no, I've got to understand this at a deeper level. I've got to be able to literally show my work, like really show it. Parents freaked out because that's not how we were taught. And we're like, we're just fine. But what I think we fail to recognize is we're preparing kids for a totally different world. Even my world that I grew up in the 90s, much less what my parents grew up in. And that failure to recognize that might be our downfall because we like to push back when something's new. But anyway, I shared that data with you to inform the next discussion, which is thinking about recommendations. I certainly heard you all kind of bringing a few out of this discussion. So our next phase will be to formalize those because the data will be certified by the board next month. And so my goal is each time to get that report out earlier and earlier and earlier. And Dr. Breeze is a tremendous resource in writing up those narratives for me. So as soon as that gets certified and accountability will send me the graphs, we can put a report together pretty early.
One of the additional final statements I'll make about your recommendations and the strong voice that you have a very strong voice in the state of North Carolina representing American Indian students. The fact that there is a SACIE says a lot. So use your voice. Use the voice of SACIE and your 30 minutes that you have before the State Board of Education to make some pretty powerful recommendations around the achievement or the lack thereof of achievement of our American Indian students. Get our attention. You have mine, but get the attention of the other 12 members of the State Board.
Well, it's kind of weird, like they're changing the ELA assessment assignment, or the tests for next year, and the teachers are teaching it now. How do you expect our children to,
The teachers have the standards, so the standards on which the assessment will be based, the teachers have those standards.
they have those standards, so they
This is
rolled it-
implementation year. Actually, implementation year was probably last year. So implementation year is now. So teachers should be teaching the standards, the new standards on which students will be assessed. Because a new assessment was created because new standards were created.
Oh, okay, all right. 'Cause I thought that
Phasing
they-
out.
Oh, okay. I thought the opposite, that they were,
No.
like a new test was
Sometimes there
coming
is a renorming of assessments to make sure they're adequately rigorous, but in this case, the standards actually changed.
And I know in my kids' math class, they're sending out homework helpers that I help my son with the math. It's like a homework helper that goes with the assignment, and that helps me out a lot because like the new ways of testing or doing the homework or the new, just adding. It's like, you know how we used to add and put the one on top, they're putting the one on the bottom, and it was confusing my son, so I'm like, just put it on top. Kind of do it that way. Because we're getting to the, why put the one right there on the bottom, but it's just like some of these things that you just think would be like, but it's hard for you a parent to help their kid if everybody's on a different teaching level, but these homework helpers do help a little, but then at the same time, it's like, oh, wow, I don't know.
Just get a tutor.
Khan Academy is phenomenal.
Yes, it is. I can advocate for that for sure. I put my daughter on that too many times.
Somebody to come in and say, here you go.
And I was going to tell you also, if you go to the wiki space, Tools for Teachers is a wonderful, wonderful pamphlet that you can use, and you can go to Tools when you go to the wiki space.
It's user friendly too.
It is. It's
Parent
wonderful. It is a
resources.
good resource, and when I was the math supervisor for the district, I would tell teachers to use it all the time. But if you go to the wiki space, you'll click on the Instructional Resources, and then it's Tools for Teachers, and you just click on it, and when you click on it, it gives you the grades K through 8. You'll click on your 4th grade, and then over there it has the cluster, and then it has the standards, and it has all these activities, and you just pull those activities and utilize them, and they are wonderful. I still do some training for teachers, and I still use it. It's really good.
And Khan Academy is great. Like I love it. But they said that, my kids on their hand are like, the guy's voice is boring, and I'm like, deal with it. At this time, you just got to deal with it and follow the steps. Like we are not playing here.
I was going to say, Khan
But
Academy is good.
yeah, I love those free. The fact that it's free is awesome because not everybody can afford tutoring or, parents. I'm
Well, that's
home.
what I say. Like, so I say this all the time to people because I am in Wake County and we have very, very good schools, and my kids are at the top schools in the state. Like, they really are. And I'm blessed for that. every person I know, their kids have a tutor for something. And I say it all the time. Well, Math 3 is here and Math 3 is in Robinson County. Well, those parents can't afford a tutor for their kids, so how are those kids passing? Because I'm not tooting my horn, but my daughter is pretty smart and like really does well, but she still has a Math 3 tutor when she had Math 3. And I'm like, how are these other parents affording this? Or what is Wheat County doing different that I have to hire a tutor when Layton County parents aren't hiring tutors and Robinson County parents aren't hiring tutors and Hope County parents and Cumberland County parents, they're not having to hire a tutor for this. But my 7th grader and at the time 6th grader, 7th grader, now 8th grader, we got a math tutor for him, for $250 a month. And how are other parents affording this? Or is it that school is just so different and teaching so much higher? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, because you can't tell me everybody's affording a tutor for their kids because I know better, So, yeah, everybody doesn't have it, that can do it. So it's very, very hard. I don't know.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's scary.
So we're now down at the report and themes. I mentioned this earlier, Dr. Silver, that we can think about the theme and have it ready for just have some dialogue. Do you need that now? Would you? I mean, I know we don't have a whole lot of time, and we probably need some time to think about the theme, and think about the recommendations at our next meeting.
I think if the goal is to meet in December, which I believe is what I heard earlier, what I would like to do is send a Google Doc, just this plain thing, do it just where everybody can jot down recommendations, so that when you come in on December, you're not starting from nothing. So I'll send that out kind of next week, and then as our meetings get closer, I start peppering you with emails, Dr. Briggs and you'll start getting those to put some ideas and thoughts in, just brainstorming. I think that would suffice at this point, if that's agreeable.
Okay. Well, let's go back to our summary, our actions, our announcements. That's where we are. First of all, what was wonderful is that we got our educational summit hopefully set. And right now that looks like it may be January the 28th if everything goes well. And it will be in Greensboro at their educational building, at Guilford County's educational building. So that's kind of what we have in place so far. We also talked a little bit about the OERC platform and maybe coming up with some information at our next meeting as it relates to whether we want to have collections or hubs. Hubs. And we also had some conversation as it relates to putting each individual state recognized tribe in a hub. We talked about that. We also spoke about, Dr. Oxendine brought up some information about looking at math and what can we do to improve those scores for our children coming. So that's some conversation we can have at our next meeting too. And we also discussed developing some PowerPoints and some additional information that we can put in the OREC platform so that teachers can utilize in their classrooms as it relates to American Indian education. And the last piece that we discussed today was our theme and our recommendations. Dr. Silver is going to develop a Google Docs, and with that we can send in our recommendations and think about a theme that we would like to have. And I think I've covered just about everything. What did I miss? Okay. I want to say,
and I finally remember it's a doodle poll. That's what I'm going to send out for meeting dates.
Okay.
But anyway, that'll be coming out.
I do want to take the time to thank everyone here. I thank everybody for their conversation, and I thank you for volunteering, because we need to hear from you, because some of the things that you're saying is not just isolated to you. I mean, this is issues all around our state. So I do thank all of you for your input. I thank you for allowing me to serve in this capacity. I'm extremely excited about our tribal consultation meeting, which is educational summit we're going to have soon. And thank you all for being here. Is there anything else we need to discuss, Dr. Silver, before we adjourn?
this
Okay.
room request form.
Do
not-
our travel.
Oh, yes, make sure you get your travel.
There's the
I want to,
sheet.
also want to take the time to thank, Dr. Oxenine, because she is our voice on the state board, and we really do appreciate, what she does for SACIE and for our children, so.
So make
Thank you, Dr.
sure that
Oxenine.
you've signed the sign-in sheet. You do have a travel form in there if you'll just sign. If you have your parking receipt today, you can leave it with me. If you want to check out and have me wait for you downstairs, you can give it to me, or you can email it, scan it and email it back to Miss Vanessa. Do want to take a minute to thank some folks. I have my staff here with me today. LaShawna McCoy, who's been over here both of us have been taking notes and minutes. Kim Babineau, who's been supporting her in that. And then help with our lunch was Miss Vanessa, and she also had two of our temps with her, which were Chantal and Michael, who were wonderful in helping bringing everything together. And Dr. Briggs isn't here today because she was out on a site visit this week, but she put all the materials together, so I just wanted to take a minute to thank her.
Thank you. I also want to thank all of our guest speakers that were here today.
Yes.
And I want to give a big shout out to Dr. Silver. And the reason for that is because she does a wonderful job of keeping us informed. A lot of times when I'm sitting in meetings in the district office and they're sharing information with me, I'm like, I already know that. And I'm so excited. So I really want to give a big shout out to her, because she makes sure she brings in individuals to share with us what's happening here at DPI and what the information that we can utilize to go back and help our children be successful. And also Dr. Oxenine, what she brings to us from the state board. So we are very fortunate to serve on this board in this capacity. So please, if possible, everybody be at our next meeting. Make sure that we keep our seat and our voice. And thank you for coming, and thank you for allowing me.
Back off what you just said. I'm in the exceptional children's department. There's been times I've come to these meetings and I've gone back and I've shared information that, even though this is SACIE and it's EC, it has been very helpful with some of this stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of times we get this information way down.
Exactly.
So it's good to have some of this information in the very forefront, especially in the EC world. So, this to me, this right here serves in many capacities. It's greatly appreciated in that aspect.
Thank you, Dr. Silver. Also want to thank all of our two Indian Ed directors, coordinators that came to be
And there
with
might
us
be
today.
some on
Please spread the word.
there might be some listening through YouTube streaming. So anybody who's listening, thank you for that. Tim.
Oh, yes. Thank everyone for listening to us today. And we would invite all of our Indian Ed coordinators across the state, our directors, to please visit us at our next meeting. Be a part of our meetings.
Is it possible for us to copy them on our emails, our agendas of our
There's
meetings?
a separate communication that goes out to them with the agenda and a link to the YouTube. So they get a separate email from you all.
So all of the
All
Indian
the directors that are listed,
okay.
whoever the district has identified as the director gets that.
And what I would say to that, if any of us know of someone who did not get the email or their name's not been updated on the list, make sure that we get that name to
Let me
Dr.
we need
Silver.
to, so there's director that's identified as being over the program. And then in a lot of districts, we have coordinators. What we rely on is the district communicating that to the coordinator. I've had some coordinators have reached out and asked if we could add. We do that. I asked that the director not be left out of the link because of discussions we've been having all day. You've got to have people who are at the cabinet level who are also part of the discussion. They can't give their responsibility just over to the coordinator. They've got to stay part of the conversation. So I like for it to go to both if possible. So,
Well, what we can do is we can spread the word to everybody else of the meetings when they're, try to make sure that we share those meetings dates. Okay, I think that covers everything that we have. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
who was that?
Any opposed? Nobody opposed?
I need to know who made the motion and who seconded it.
Motion.
I did the second.
Motion.
Dorothy Yates.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great one.
I'll get Miss
See you soon.
Vanessa Williams will